So I'm clicking on that add and I'm saying application insights telemetry out here. And once I say that, I'll say please add something called as an Azure application insights. So it's telling monitor a web app performance with the usage with a connection to an instance running in Azure. I'll say yes, great. I'll say next. And this is going to ask me, let's say, this is going to, let's say, log me in. And it's going to ask me, okay, fine, what is a subscription? Let me go and see if I have a subscription out here. Okay, let's see. Okay, let me come back and let me again go back. Okay, let's see if I'm able to get my subscription. Let me close this out once again. Let me try re-adding this out. Add a source dependency. Say Azure Application Insights. Okay, yes. So I have my subscription that I was, let's say, searching for. And here I have the application insights that I want because it's something that I created just now. I will say next. And it says, okay, fine. I will need to add something called as application insights connection string into your app settings. I'll say great, not a problem. Go ahead, add this out. I'll say, and if you look at this one, it's nothing but the connection string value. This is the entire connection string value, which is telling it's an ARM template again. It's just the entire connection string value, which is telling what is the ID of the application insights, what is the name of the insights, what is the insight component, where is it located, and all that stuff. I'll say great. Please take this. I'll say next. I'll say yes, this is great. I'll say finish. So it's now adding the entire application insights to me. It's telling adding the code to startup.cs file. It's configuring. It's basically going ahead and configuring your entire code so that when your code starts up, it goes ahead and reports to the application insights out here. And I'll say close. Now, as a developer, I can again go ahead, commit this entire code into my Git repository, and then go ahead and redeploy it. And once I redeploy this, it is going to configure application insights for me. But what I'll do is that to, in the best interest of time, I'll just go ahead and do publish from here only. So I'll republish my code onto the app service. I'll say publish, and I'll say okay, fine. Do a new publishing. I'll say Azure. Say next. I'll say Azure App Service Windows. Say next. I'll say this one and click on this particular app service and say finish. And it's now going to go ahead and let's say give me a publishing profile. It's good enough. And in this, I'll just go ahead and edit the configuration and just remove the additional files at destination. So say remove additional files at destination. I'll save and I'll click on the deploy option. Again, if you do not have the application, if you do not have, let's say, the Visual Studio with you, you can use your Azure DevOps pipeline to go ahead and let's say deploy this out. But again, you'll have to let's say commit and then you'll have to deploy. So I'm just avoiding that particular route. I'm directly deploying it from my local machine. But you can commit all this code into your Azure DevOps pipeline, and then you can go ahead and start let's say deploying your code onto the Azure, let's say on the Azure web app out there as such. It's now going ahead and it's deploying the entire code into that particular let's say web app. And once that's done, it's telling okay, fine, web app was successfully published. It's restarting the application and it's making sure to install let's say all the required components and etc. This is a standard part of the deployment, but this code right now is now being deployed and it's now loading this particular page and you're getting the same error. The reason you're getting the same error is because again your password is not right. We have a misconfigured password in the code, all these things out here. So let me close this and let me check this out. So let me come back. Now in my resource group, I have the updated code. The code is configured so that it will respond to the application insights while connecting or whenever it starts up. It will try to respond back to the application insights out here and try to send in a lot of logs and try to funnel in a lot of logs into the application insights out here. So let me go into the resource group Let me just scroll down, and I have this particular AI application insights out here. Let me go there. And firstly, let's go into something called as application map. Now, again, it's going to take some time for the application map to load up. Let's wait for this one to load. Let me refresh the screen. No data available. Let's see. Let's go back and check whether our application is configured to, let's say, go ahead and let's say properly configured and let's say communicate with the insights. It's configuration. Again, once you configure it, it will take around 2 to 3 minutes of time for the application insights to understand. So let's see. Why isn't this configured? Let's see. It's got deployed. So it has a connection string. It's pointing out to the application insight instance, which is good enough. And let's see, is application insights, connection string, and all these things, which is good enough. Great. Let's scroll down and let's see. Let's come back into our resource group once again, and let's go into the application insights. And let's see whether this, yes. So it will take some time initially for the application or for the application insights to understand. Give it like a minute or two after your deployment is done. And now it's starting to track two different things. It's telling the dev web app XYZ SQL USEs2, which is your application, which is your web app. It's trying to communicate with something called as an SQL, and specifically something called as a demo database. And the calls are failing. It's telling, you know what, whenever you're trying to initiate this one, so let's go and do that. Let's go back into our let's go back into our app service, into that particular URL, and let's do this. I'll go ahead, say browse this out, and do this refresh a couple of times. So I'm refreshing my page a couple of times to do generate a cut, let's say artificial requests, and every time I generate that out, let's refresh the screen. The amount of calls, again, there is a slight delay between, let's say, the call that you actually have and the tracking in the application insights. It will take some time for the application insights to, it will take about 2 or 3 minutes of time for the application insights to understand that there are multiple requests that are coming. As of now, it's only telling there are two calls, meaning I just did two requests out here, and those two requests failed. The reason being, it's communicating with this particular database. So it's telling, okay, fine, there is some issue with your database and etc. So let me refresh this out. And now if you see, it's saying 24 calls, 100% failure rate. And if I click on this, now your application insights is going to tell you what exactly is failing. So it's telling, okay, fine, you know what, that particular call, which is called get course, which is called, let's say, something called get course out here. So there's something called as a course table inside your database. And whenever your application is starting up, it's going into that particular course table, trying to do some query and trying to get some data back to you. That is not happening. So this call itself is failing, or this, let's say, request is itself failing. See, this is one way to do. Sorry, let me go back into the application insights. This is one way to do it, wherein you can go inside this particular map, kind of do this one out. Or the other way to do it is by using something called as a live metrics tab out here. This is one of the most useful ways to actually do this. So if you come here, it's now telling live metrics is being configured. Now this is all live, okay? And let's see, it's telling last 60 seconds I'm tracking the calls to your website. There are no calls, there are no incoming requests. It's almost a deadline out here. If I come here, refresh the screen a couple of times. So I'm doing a couple of refreshes, and every time I refresh, I'm requesting or I'm reloading this application. Every time I'm reloading this application, it's going ahead and talking to the application insights, and all these are failing. This is what it tells you. It's a live graph. It has a very slight delay, 1 or 2 seconds. And now it's saying a couple of things like, what are the amount of incoming requests, and what are the request failure rate. If you see, the incoming request is almost equal to the failure rate out here. It's telling what are the outgoing requests, what are the call failures out here, and etc. And this is what it has. This is all called as a stack trace, meaning these are all the traces of your application. Whenever your application loads out, it leaves out a lot of traces. So it's telling the request is here, wherein it is going to something called as get course, and it's trying to do something called index. It's trying to get that particular index page, and it's telling that this is the exception, meaning this is the error. Login failed for the test user. There is some issue with that particular test user, and also this is the dependency. When I say dependency, it's telling which call is failing, which service is not actually able to respond. It's telling, what, this is a SQL server, something called usc2000.databases.windows.net, and the database inside that, which is called DemoDB. This is failing to respond back. Whenever I give a test user, it's now failing to respond back. And what I can do is just click on this one, and okay, this won't give you a lot of information. So now just selling something called exceptions, and also there's this failure tab. If you click on failures, same thing, 500 what you are able to see on the browser, and also something called SQL exception. So I know there is something happening with the SQL database. So if I click on this one, this will now give me an elaborate explanation on what is happening. It's telling login failed for this particular user. There is some issue with this, and also which part of the code is failing. It's going to give you all these logs out here telling what exactly is failing and etc. It will also give you this particular presentation where your application is calling to the SQL server and then it's failing out here. There's something to do with the test user. Now, depending upon this one, you'll be able to now comment that, yes, I have an issue with that particular user login. Either you reset that particular password or you correct the password inside that particular, let's say, app service. In my case, since I know that I've changed this, I'll just go ahead into the, let's say, test user, understand what is the password which is configured, match it out with the password that I have it in the key vault, see if both are, let's say, right. If it's not, either redeploy my application or come here. I'll see, okay, fine, both are not matching. Change this out. I'll say, okay, save, continue. So I'm coming here, matching this particular password with the one that is there in my key vault. I'll say, okay, fine, this is fine. This is the wrong password out here. I'll say restart my application. So once I go ahead change the password, I'm restarting the application out here. And once I restart this, I'll give it some time for the application to load, because after a restart you need about a minute or so. And once that's done, I'll now test whether the application is working. And working. And once it starts working, right, your application insights will also track the positive calls, not only the negative. It'll also start tracking the positive calls out here. So if I go into the live metrics, it takes around 10 seconds to, let's say, start the live metrics out here. Let's refresh the screen a couple of times and let's see. So here you have an incoming call rate. It's telling what is the request duration. No failure at all. All calls are, let's say, going fine. And just come here. It will also tell you what is the memory consumption that is happening on your app service plan, meaning how much of memory is being consumed, what is the available memory out here, and which instance of your app service plan is actually responding back, and so on and so forth. Setting the amount of memory, 2% of the CPU is consumed and extra. And not only that, if you go back into your application map, it will now start telling, okay, fine, the positive calls are coming in. So greens are, let's say, going, I mean, green is, let's say, coming up right now. There are a lot of negative calls out there. And slowly it will also update that, you know what, out of 49 calls, one call will succeed and all that stuff. But it'll take some time, and it'll also go ahead and update this particular map, telling that, okay, fine, there are successful calls that are coming in. So using application insights, now you can start tracking things like, you know uh, what is the call to my, or what are, let's say, all the calls, what is the, let's say, time it takes. So for example, cumulatively 50 calls took around 59 milliseconds, meaning one call takes around 1 millisecond out here. It's telling how fast or how slow your application is, what are the failures, and all the failures are, let's say, tracked out inside this particular, let's say, inside this particular failure map. Or you can use the live metrics to, let's say, track all these things out. So you can do a couple of things. And believe me guys, application insights is a great tool. It's really a great tool, let's say, to go ahead, understand what are your errors, look at your errors and all these things out. And there are two people who are involved out here. One is that you need to create the application insights as a role of a DevOps engineer. Two, you need to configure something known as a telemetry injection, and this is something that means that the development team needs to do. Once both is done, you can start using the application insights out here to track your issues, track your errors, and all these things out here. Yes, anyone, any questions that I can take? Any questions that I can take till here? Traffic, page hitting, both are same, right? So yes, calls are nothing but, if you just go ahead, can we download the log files? Yes, you can download the log files also. You can download the log files, send it across the teams and etc. So yes, calls are nothing but whenever you request your application, it's called as a call. And that application makes a lot of calls to, let's say, something like a SQL server or something like a storage account. So whichever, let's say, component your application talks to, we just call it as a call. And yes, sir, can we download the log files? Yes. Monitoring logs is DevOps engineer's job. Yes, it is a DevOps engineer's job. It is DevOps engineer. It is a DevOps job out here. DevOps is not only building your infrastructure and building the pipelines, it is also configuring the application insights and also monitoring the logs. So monitoring also comes under a DevOps engineer role. Yes, any more questions here?
Yes, sir.
Good, please.
So in real time, do we use application insights or any other like what are the
Uh,
other monitoring tools we use?
you have open source monitoring tools like, let's say, you have something called New Relic, you have Prometheus, you have Grafana, you have a lot of things out here. So if you are using Azure, and if your cloud solution is based out of Azure, 99 out of the 100 times you would be using application insights out there. But yes, you have a lot of other open source options, as I said, Prometheus, Grafana, you have a lot of things out there as such. All these are monitoring tools out here. New Relic, all these are monitoring tools out there. Yes, any more questions there, guys? Anyone, any more questions here? DevOps is only having permission to see logs. Application insights, normally anyone has only the permission to see logs out there, to download logs and see logs. And also, let's say, go ahead, look at the live metrics and all that stuff. So kind of, yes, we have the permission to create, see logs and download the logs and everything. Yes, any more questions here?
Hi, sir.
Good, please. Good, please.
So in reality, the web app will be connected to like various databases, no? In
Mm-hmm.
real time, and then how
Mm-hmm.
it will be
Correct.
like how how will we get to know which from which the failure is occurring?
uh, did you see the failure? Firstly, let's go there.
Yes.
Let's go to SQL exception. You'll have to understand this. Let's go to the failure out here and let's see. Do you see it's telling this is a SQL server? This is our SQL server. And do you see something called as a demo database? If you have a different database, it will write a different name out here. So it's not only tracking which server it is, it's also tracking which database it is. In my case, I only have one database. It's telling the error is coming from the demo DB. If you have multiple databases which your application is actually, let's say, sending a request to, and those requests are failing, all those will come here and they'll get, let's say, logged out here telling it is sample DB, demo DB, course DB, whatever it is. It'll all, let's say, get shortlisted out here, and depending upon this, I can say, okay, fine. This is the database to which the connection is actually failing. So let me go ahead fix that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank
Yes. Any questions, guys? Anyone? Any more questions here? Okay. Now, before coming to the class tomorrow, again, we will have an 8 a.m. class tomorrow only. Today I had some work. Okay, can we see the previous log files? When you say previous log files, what do you exactly mean out here? Like log files of, let's say, yesterday, day before yesterday, or something like that? Yes, you can do that. It's you'll have to set this timeout, telling which day or which, let's say, log that you want, and you can just say apply that out, and then you can basically look at those logs, and also you can download those logs out there. So yes, so if that was the question, then yes, you can set this timeout to whichever time interval that you want to look at the logs, and you can maximum go back to 90 days. 90 days, if I'm not wrong. So 3 months is what you can go back and, let's say, look at the logs out there as such. Does it answer your question, Ramakrishna? Can we connect the app insights to, let's say, last week example is, can we connect the app insights to something like IaaS services? Good question. For IaaS services, you will have to install inside the IaaS service something called as a Microsoft monitoring agent. Microsoft monitoring agent out here. It's called MMA for health. So you'll need to install this out. You'll need to download and install this out. And while installing it, it'll ask you what is your destination. Do you want to connect to an application insights, or do you want to connect to something called as a log analytics workspace in Azure? Then you can go ahead and connect that out here as such. So you'll have to configure this out for, let's say, a virtual machine. So I'll just send this article across. You can take a look at this. For a PaaS service, this is already done by default by Microsoft. But for an IaaS service, you will have to, let's say, go ahead and do this. Again, you can have an ARM template for this to go ahead and, let's say, download that out and configure it out as such. Any more questions here, guys? One generic question. Okay. Is there any recommended cost optimization service in the portal? Cost optimization. Okay, recommended cost optimization service. Again, I don't think so. Again, cost optimization service. If you say that, I'm just trying to understand. Are you asking if there is any service to, let's say, optimize my cost, or I'm not too sure about this question. Yeah, I'm not too sure about this. Yes, service, but what? Okay, if you can elaborate a little bit on that, it'll be helpful for me. So, any more questions that I can take before I just get that, let's say, elaboration out there? Any more questions out here?
Hi, sir.
Go please.
It means we have to install like Microsoft monitoring tool on our local machine, sir, like to
No, sir,
monitor
you
this.
have to install. No, you'll have to install Microsoft Monitoring Agent on the virtual machine that you have, so that the virtual machine can start sending out logs to your application
Oh,
insights or to something called as log analytics workspace out there.
like VM server, sir, in the VM
Yes, VM
server.
servers. Yes, correct. So you'll have to install this entire monitoring agent on the VM server. In a PaaS service, the code will take care of it. The code will take care of installing Microsoft Monitoring Agent and all, because it's a PaaS service, right? In an infrastructure as a service, you will have to install this Microsoft Monitoring Agent and funnel the logs into something known as the application insights out here as such. Yes, any more questions here? Okay. Suggestion service for reducing cost. Good. Okay, fine. We replied this out. So suggestion services, yes. You have something called as an Azure Advisor. Here, it's going to tell you again. I do not have, let's say, a lot of things that Azure Advisor really tells you out there. But yes, it takes some time for the skit to get updated, and it's going to tell you what is actually costing you. Can you reduce this out? What are the performance of your applications? Can you do anything better, and etc. So Azure Advisor becomes that particular service which will kind of talk about all these things out. Again, see, if you see cost 100%, so let's say I'm good with that. There is no issue there, because I'm creating and deleting my services, so there are no issues in the cost, so I'm good there. So I'll give you an overview telling that if security is good in your infrastructure, performance is good, and all that stuff. So Azure Advisor gives you that, let's say, is that particular service. You don't have to deploy it out. It's a service that is free on the portal. So whenever you deploy your services, Azure Advisor is going to act like, let's say, that artificial intelligence engine that is running in the background, understanding what you're doing, and if there is anything that you can reduce, or any suggestions that it can give you, and etc. Does that answer your question, Ramakrishna? Yes, any more questions here, guys? All right, so my request for everyone, before coming down to the class tomorrow, again we will have an 8 a.m. session, the regular timing. Today I had some work, so I couldn't take it at the 8. Before you come to the class tomorrow, just read this topic called, what is, just say in Google, what is YAML. Understand what really is YAML out here, and how do you write a YAML file. Two things that I want to see is, what is YAML. Just go to YouTube and also say YAML basics. And I don't have a video preference. You can look at any video out here on, let's say, this one. Just see how do you write a language called YAML. And in tomorrow's session, we'll discuss about YAML and how to use YAML in Azure DevOps. What do you do? What do you do with YAML and all these things out here? Okay, so that's the assignment from my end, and I also hope you are looking at the requirement that I have given to you all yesterday. Again, if you do not have that link, I'll again repost it here, since we do not have anyone offline. I'll just repost it back again so that everyone can, let's say, bookmark it out. Let's go into a particular project. Let's go here. Let's go into the real-time requirements, and please take this and please bookmark it at your end, and give it a read. Go through each and every section of that article. There is no rush. Take your time, and please try to, let's say, understand how the strategy is actually implemented, and that should, let's say, give you some amount of idea on how things work in the real-time environment as such. Okay, so that's it from mine, guys. We'll meet tomorrow, and we'll start discussing about YAML, and we'll continue our discussion on Saturday as well. Thank you, and have a good day ahead. Thanks, guys.